Welcome to the episode of Just More Fix. This is James. With the episode is Lacey. You can find us online at justmorefix.com or on Twitter at just, if you like us, you can support us at Patreon and you can give us a rating and review at iTunes, wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to talk about Powered by the Disaster. And now it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Willie D. Nelson from All Things Good and Nerdy, a pop culture podcast, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other tantalizingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
This episode picks up kind of in a weird place in the middle of a discussion where you were having about designing a game that would use, where the players would manage a disaster from the incident command level. So kind of cuts in an odd place, but I wasn't really sure where to start this one because we just sort of started talking about it and it kind of grew out of an unrelated discussion. So without any further ado, here it is.
I don't know if there's anything there that popped.
Spoiler.
Yeah. We haven't done anything in medical. For a while, we were kind of semi-regular about like trying to work medical. I did think about when I was out in New York about the way things operated out there and how it would kind of disaster. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of the disaster stuff you do. A Hurricane Rex, we went out there, power, the AC. What? Do you know what I'm saying?
Maybe we could do I don't problem because that sounds super boring when we say it that way, but like running a scenario where your focus is not on the individual event, but on the overarching problem, so like disaster scene management, basically.
Being an incident command. They have that game. It's called 2 days of NIMS training, followed by two more days of NIMS training.
But that sounds boring. Actually,
it wasn't. It was the best NIMS training I've had. It really was. It was fun. We did tabletop exercises. The other thing that was fun about it was that...
almost like an investigative style game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But really, though.
No, I know. Well, I've had this desire to kind of make an emergency response role-playing sort of as a training, you know what I mean? Like one-part game. Mm-hmm. But I listened to this seminar someone gave about using games teaching, and they were talking about in medicine how we use, like, we role-play in medicine, do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then they were like,
except it's always lame and
true story,
dumb.
True story. Don't disagree.
And then you end up telling the person, like, well, why didn't you tell them their CPR wasn't good enough? Because they were doing it on a dummy.
Yeah. But, like, they were talking about how, like, you shouldn't be trying to teach this stuff because it's, and I'm like, that's like, even maybe you don't have the medical expertise to be able to, the relevant knowledge, but it's not that hard and it's way easy to gamify that stuff. I
guess I'm sort of thinking about, like in MASH, right? Their whole trauma surgery process is sort of like that with triaging and the eye for what's coming next. It's not completely, but it's sort of.
So you would have, like, for lack of a better word, the body would, or lack of a better analogy, the body would be the incident and it would have different locations that you have to
but I wouldn't do like just a body.
No. I'm just saying, using it as an analogy for, are you talking about for the medical thing or for the incident command thing?
For the incident command thing.
Okay. I'm just saying, using the body as the analogy, like that's the incident, not that it's an actual body, right? But like, this is the bridge town. That could work. But the only thing about that would be is...
It sort of reminds me of a town called Malice too, right? And then you have an incident, there's a little bit of investigation that's happening, and there's multiple things that you're trying to put resources to.
The only thing I would say about it is that I would feel like, okay, so a couple things. I think I would want to play in a MAShed game that was ran and largely played by non-medical professionals and see, not like to critique them, but to see how they conceptualize how that game runs. Because if you have no incident command experience or training, it probably doesn't run the way you think it does. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, which isn't exactly it either.
No,
like it's just the only thing I can think of that's
I don't
close.
disagree. No, but I think you're onto something there. But what I'm saying though is that our MASH games that we play and run are probably significantly different than what other people's are because
you run it for non-medical people too.
Yeah, but it's also coming. So it's okay. It's easier for you to play into my expertise because I have the jargon and I can make it relatable and I know some stories to sort of draw from, right?
Right.
But that works because I'm running the game and these people are playing into it, right? And versus if you're, what do you call it?
I get what you're saying. I get an annoyed if I sit down to play a game. I don't know tropes, like I don't know the setting. I don't know anything about the history or what's going on.
Well, I get and I don't think I wouldn't be nitpicking at it. I would just want to see like how do you conceptualize this game and what is your vision of it? Because let's just like we're gonna hack down the population, right? So like there's the whole population. Well, how many of those percentage of those people are first responders at any level? Boom, we're talking like almost nobody, right? So now we've got that piece. Now of those people who have actual incident command training, boom, that's almost fucking even smaller nobody now, right? Now of those people who have actually been to a large incident, boom, now we're even smaller. Now of those who were who had any level of command, okay, now who actually used it? You know what I'm saying? You know, so now that's why like I think you'd have to find a way to make that game relatable to and you know like laid out in a way that people would identify with it. Do you know what I mean? Like in a
well, I think if you did a disaster that people are familiar with, you know, 11's like too big. But
Yeah.
it's something.
Well, I think you'd have
something
to go,
that everyone.
I think you'd have to go
you know.
far enough back though to where it wasn't necessarily exact, like at the edge of a little bit, because then you get, you know, it can cause some problem.
Yeah, a train, like a steam engine.
What was the town with the Fireball Festival?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh man, there's a town up by Hoopston that had a train that stopped there that was pulling propane tankers by train, and there was some fire and they all caught fire and exploded, and they were like shooting rocket style train cars all over the place.
It's awful.
And they had and now they have a festival to commemorate it, and it's called the Fireball Festival.
The maple syrup factory
Oh yeah,
would be good too.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one. You're like, what? No, why?
yeah. Well, there's so much of that stuff that's weird too, because you don't think about it. Like, okay, cool. So we have all this maple syrup, but like that's a giant EPA problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah. So like for one of the ones we did for training to manage, they had
The
to,
BP oil spill made a good one. There
That's
wasn't a
too
ton
close.
of. Well, yeah, but there's not a ton of like, yeah.
but like the bird one that we did, it was an avian flu thing, and it was an actual thing that they had to do. They had to euthanize, I think it was like 5 million chickens, giant industrial chicken farm. So, but then it was like, well, okay, so we could figure out how to do that. It's it's not a hard task, right? It's large, but it's not hard. But then you have all these dead chickens. You can't bury 5 million dead chickens because it will wreck the water table. So it's like, who do we even, you know?
What about Operation Beaver Drop?
Right? So.
Or seals? I don't even remember.
It's beaver trap. They parachute the beavers in. I've been rolling that around in my head because I have this idea to use a start triage kit as your game. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's the product that you would buy, and I just think it could be wicked
what we're
cool.
talking.
I don't know.
We should pick the perfect event, a historical event. I feel like that's where you need to start so you actually see it.
I think we probably have to go through and pick one out.
Let's talk about it. What do you want to pick?
I have no idea.
Can't think of a single interesting historical event.
So my thing is, I would want to. Here's the problem. I would want to pick something far enough back to where it's not contemporary. I guess. You know what I'm saying? And then
I don't want to do a pandemic because it's just too.
No, I agree.
Plus, there's a board game about that.
True. Yeah.
So it's got to be something different, but some kind of incident where there's a potential health hazard also that's ongoing, I feel like. So not like, you know, the sinking of the Titanic. Like it needs to be something that's going to cause ongoing mayhem.
Because all the ones that I know that we are in the last, we did the big Mississippi Bridge collapse up north. We used that one as a training exercise. I've done some really cool, what's called LEPC training, which for the railroad, where railroad trains carry all kinds of crazy shit.
I think a railroad crash, a good one. So you have like an immediate disaster, you have property damage, you have potential contents on the train, you've got rerouting of traffic and people that has to happen, plus the goods that come in on the tracks itself. Like there's a lot of compounding issues involved in something like that.
Well, there were a couple times in different places that I worked where we had black trains come through that were all black, and they had armed guards on them because they would never tell us what they were. They tell us when they were through or whatever. I think they were like nuclear waste or whatever, going out to like Yucca or whatever to get buried underground. But they were always really weird. That's why we got big funding to do all this LEPC training or whatever. And it was like, what are they? What is it? Why is the guy with a machine gun running a train? What is this? Like, is the Pony Express coming through too? Like, what are we doing? You know? But yeah, so we always had these scenarios where it's like, okay, so of course, it's the craziest scenario you can ever imagine. There's a school bus. It stops on the railroad tracks. It gets hit by a train. The train is carrying tankers full of methyl ethyl death. Go. You know? And it was like, oh no. So I was like, what resource do you have? I don't know. The other thing is, I'm like, am I too in the weeds on this game? Kind of a thing, because, do you know what I mean? Like all the...
I don't think so. I think, some of it you trim back, but I think you start by kind of laying it all out there and then, cutting back what is superfluous, but I like Alan's Steam Hack setup, and I like how people have different sort of skills to contribute. I think that would be cool for some of this too, so like...
No, you're right.
Like the leadership skills, and then like, maybe different contacts even could be, I don't know how you would break it down. Like his analysis versus stuff, same sort of situation, thinking versus doing. So yeah, I think a good old fashioned train. I'm sure there are tons of them historically that you could pull from.
Well, I know that.
Or you could just make up one that's,
what we did for
a similar scenario.
LET trainings or whatever, so yeah.
But like late 1800s. Yeah.
No, I don't even go that far back, because when you go that far back, so if it's something we're just going to make up, right, you can just do that and that's not a big deal. But like
15.
But there's nothing in place for that time period. There's no incident management. None of that exists. Like not even close. Like hell, there's not even ambulances yet.
Oh, somebody had to try and manage the problem still.
You're right, but it wouldn't be any. It would probably be the company that had the problem, and they'd just be piling dirt on top of whatever.
What did they call those people? Pinkertons.
Pinkertons, yeah. But they did investigation. But like, so if the railroad had that wreck, they just like,
they did more of a getting to the problem.
Well,
in the muscly sense of the.
But that was like for let me see, personnel issues. Right.
Anything is a personnel issue if you try hard enough.
But I could just see him being like, cool, let's just dump that train car over, and we're just gonna put some. Okay, right. Don't worry about what's in there. But then if you do it now, like you can get the ERG involved, or emergency response guy with all the chemicals.
So
shit.
What do you think? Like the 70s is when all that stuff is really starting to emerge as like an actual organizational thing? Because that's when you see EMS going from sort of haphazard to actually establishes like 60s, 70s, right?
No. 70s is when it becomes its own thing, but they're not organized, like at a larger level. Do you know what I'm saying?
There's no FEMA 1970s? I'm pretty sure that there is. Do you have your phone? Yeah.
But the other thing is, it was like,
when FEMA started.
Like the incident command system doesn't exist until after 9/11.
Okay. But there were disasters before that were being managed by people.
Not very few.
We had hurricanes, we had National Guard responses for floods.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that. What I'm saying, though, is a large multi-agency response was always very, very...
Okay, but not impossible.
No.
And you're talking about a gaming scenario, and you want it to be outside of living memory for a disaster, so...
Well, yeah, but I'm saying...
Or outside of at least close proximity.
Right, but I think if we make something up, it's... So if you got established April 1st, 1970...
See, boom, 70. Bear.
I'm just looking at all these.
When does hazmat become a thing?
It's a big difference.
Not direct.
So the first ERG, with the big chemical database book, was established by the Department of Transportation. So yeah, 70s could work.
Okay. It's got kind of a dark feel too, right? Like weird substances and like the poor managerial things.
There's a school bus and it stopped on the tracks and it was hit by a train that was carrying a 2,000-gallon tanker full of LSD. It is spilled everywhere and aerosolized across the community. Go.
Well, the 80s are interesting too, because there's still... Like those organizations are so new that the amount of teeth that something like that has,
exactly.
Like especially going up against a large corporate presence, if there's a problem, like trying to rein those things in and get them to cooperate.
Yeah, but I think that gets into how long do you want to have to manage the problem? Because like if we're talking about a train wreck, right? So train wrecks, we have the initial incident that happened. So now we have like evacuation stuff that might have to happen, downwind, right? You have the medical aspect of it, and then clean
containment first.
Well, yeah, but like all that stuff happened, and that's all probably going to happen pretty.
Well, I think that's where you look at mechanics for things that can improve the turnaround time of stuff. So like maybe one of the people that you have is like some kind of, businessman negotiator type, right? And so if you can get more resources from a company that's responsible for this in some way, then you can improve the turnaround time on those things, because more money equals more manpower.
But you don't have to take... So this is why I don't know if I'm too close to it. So like if it's a disaster, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to take bids for shit. There's going to be federal money you're going to get, and they just say, cool, this is within this window of time you have, and you can just reward contracts. There's no bids. You just say you're doing it, you go, and they go do it.
Yeah, I think you're too close to it. I think you give somebody, this is how much money you have, this is how much manpower you have. If you want to go above and beyond that, you have to figure out a way how to do it.
Right, because all they do is just find local resources and say, cool, you've got dozers, whatever you're doing, here's the money. I mean, they're going to pay on the back end or whatever, but they don't have to, because like normally, if it's in a municipality, they have to bid those contracts out. But once you cross this line for disaster, it doesn't matter anymore.
It's not as cool as corporate.
I mean, there's still you always have the local politics happen. So I'm a city alder, I'm on the county council or whatever. whatever form of government is, with county or city, municipality, whatever. And so there's going to be this contract. I've got a buddy who owns a construction company.
See, I want to see like whatever Exxon owns this fuel tanker that crashed, and they want their track back up and running, and their CEO knows your boss, and now you're under extra constraints because of that, and you better make it work.
There's a railroad police too. I forgot about that, because they have their own police. Which, yeah, it is. I'm telling you, this is a weird rabbit hole to fall down and be like, what? They have what? And they're not like a municipal.
If they're not called Pinkertons, I'm going to be very disappointed with this whole story.
They are not.
That is nonsense. Need to be the Pinkerton department. Well, historically, I know where this is coming from.
It's coming from the fact that the railroads have lots of money, and they are going to protect that railroad.
See, exactly. You talk about exactly when you're going to have my track opened back up. So, what kind of like character to play? What are the key roles that have to be represented in order to make it like a game?
So I think I think what has to be a decision that has to be made is how far down the chain of things do you want to manage disaster?
So I don't want to be on like a super finite level, because then it's just looking too similar to other RPGs. Like I want to keep it like high level.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is, how long do you want to manage this? Do you want to manage start to finish, like completely? Or do you just want to manage the initial disaster, what you would call a disaster, and not like the repair? Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Because like all the repair stuff happens.
I think probably the initial disaster.
That's kind of where I'm coming to. So my thought is, depending on how many players you have, literally just go into the instant command book and just pull the main roles out of everything.
Okay, so
what's that look like? Fire.
So then you're talking about the chief of the fire department. When you say fire, right? You're not talking about like,
Correct.
Attack Crew 1.
No, right, yeah. So EMS.
So that's your regional EMS coordinator. That's your EMS manager at an individual department.
That's an EMS. So if you're in a municipality,
it's not called a chief.
They places have EMS chiefs. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So you have a fire chief. Now they're technically usually like a deputy chief, right? But they're deputy chief of EMS. Do you know what I'm saying? Does it make sense? So they're not.
So that's for like combined department?
Yeah. Or it would be like when I was an ops manager, it would be me. It would just be, I'm the EMS guy. I'm the operations manager. So I think
in the setting of a game, it makes more sense for them to be two complete separate entities, because then it's more difficult for them to work together. So I think if you call your fire person a chief, you should call your EMS person like a director or something different.
Okay. Well, we can label names, whatever. So then you have police. So whether that's if it's in a city, it's going to be the chief. If it's in county, it's going to be the sheriff. Do you know what I'm saying? So then you have...
Question. If it's a train, does it make it a federal instead of a local?
Then you're going to... So let's just do this as a disaster. Let's just lay out our disaster. So let's just do the one I said is ridiculous. It's like everything that possibly can go wrong. So train with tetrahydroterabinol.
That's not a chemical for anybody to score.
Oh, it is.
Unknown substance bad.
Hits. Well, we actually say tetrahydroterabinol and methyl ethyl death. Those are actually,
That doesn't make it a real thing.
No, but it's a good gaming fun. So it hits a school bus.
Can we do charter bus instead? I don't want dead children.
Okay.
Thank you. In other games, yes, but this is supposed to be something close to real.
Right.
So just make charter.
Well, our thing was it doesn't.
If you make it a charter bus, you could have some serious media presence. It could be like a basketball team or like.
Well, in our situation, it wasn't like it smoked the bus. It's like it clips it. Do you know what I'm saying? So then you have.
I say no.
Okay. Well, either way, though, I think that's the way to go. No matter what kind of bus it is, or even if it is just a pickup truck or a tractor, because now what the idea was, it was to just overwhelm the overwhelm the system. So regardless of whether adults or aliens or whatever, we just want loads with the full spectrum of injuries. You hit it, if it's like full on into a bus, well, there's that's it probably. So that this way you end up, if it clips the bus, then it's just you get this full spectrum: bumps and scratches, significant injuries, serious injuries, critical.
So then
injuries.
you don't really have to involve the bus organization the same way you do the railroad, because it's just sort of like in the way.
So this is where railroad is going to be there. Your Department of Transportation involved, because it's going to be depending on what roads are involved, and if they're major roads, those have to be shut down and managed and traffic rerouted. So
does Department of Transportation handle railroad routes as well, or is that all on the railroad people?
Nah, sure. The railroad usually comes out for whoever owns track.
Okay, just curious who handles the actual traffic.
Oh, the railroad. So, but there's a thing that's set in motion we call DOT. Like when the dispatch comes into the dispatch center, they are the ones that lay all that out, and they have a list.
Do you have to include like the power company.
Dispatch possible. So
to make that a problem.
Utilities.
Why does dispatch to be a thing?
I don't know. I'm just listing everybody out.
Okay.
So if this would be a thing where you would pare this down depending on how many players you had.
Right. I just don't. Okay.
Or you could put communication.
I just don't think that in a game sense, like it's important in just communicating, but I don't know in a game sense it's going to be an interesting role to play.
I don't disagree. So
I don't really think the utilities interesting. I think that falls more in like a problem sort of category.
Well, I think it depends on what your disaster revolves around. In this case, like the railroad person could be changed out with whatever. So like if it's a water, okay, it's utility. So you have your PIO, which is your public information officer, to roll it because they're the ones who talk to the media. Sometimes it's actually for a larger disaster ends up being a political, the mayor, county.
What about like the hospital? Or maybe that should just fall in like the utilities sort of category too, because I don't know that would be an interesting role to play either, but it's definitely something that has to be
Well, I think it depends on how many injuries you have and if you have enough people to fill that. So like initially you're going to fill the EMS role because they're going to be boots on the ground right in the thick of it. If you have extra people, then yeah, we can have, the hospital here because all those people have to go to a hospital, right?
So okay, but these are like, so who's actually running the scene? This is a game. I don't care about real life. You're trying to teach people how to run a scene. So forget all of the nonsense that can happen about whose scene it is. Like, I want positions like roles like this is your incident commander. This is your coordinator for EMS. This is your...
That's a real thing, but that gets decided. Like, it's kind of funny.
It's your game. Decide right now. It's a train crash. Who's the incident commander role?
The fire chief. It's going to be...
Then a fire chief, because I don't think your police chief ever has hazmat calling.
No, but this is where it kind of gets in the weeds where, like, just because you're the what they call the IC, the incident commander, doesn't mean you have to have all the relevant knowledge, because then you have beneath you have people that have specific area of knowledge that you depend on to say, hey, that's a terrible idea. This is why. Oh, okay. How do I do that then? Do you know what I'm saying? So realistically, I can probably tell you it's probably going to be the police. Or it'll be police or fire. I don't know. It just depends on the local politic of how things work, I guess. So you could say, but this is where it actually gets weird. If you actually want to follow the incident, your actual commander breaks. So there's an ops, there's a section. So I guess we could just easily focus the funding, building paper. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit like gaming. You don't want to sit there and fill out forms. You know what I'm saying?
No, but like if there's like bartering or haggling involved in that sort of position, like, okay, so think about like the Steam hack thing with the Corvair, right? There's a guy there who's responsible for making sure that your marketing guy, that's your marketing guy. He's responsible for budgeting and making sure things happen in a timely fashion so that you're not costing people money. He's sort of your ticking clock, if you will. And maybe that's someone that also has more of a political position too. Like they were, picked by somebody for this position. They have ties, because obviously like your town mayor and stuff like that and your railroad people want this up as quick as possible. They want it to be as small of a incident as possible so it doesn't look bad, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't think you should write it off. Like to me, it sounds like each one of these could be a role. Incident commander, operations, logistics, finance, and then whatever this other medical.
No, it's not. So what's weird is actually under the operations section, it actually breaks out like me where I fit into this. Generally, there's an EMS section underneath this because we're very specific. Okay. This is what we do, right? So like I'm not, and then each of these sections has a commander, right? So it's ops command line. Yeah. But
I think one commander, and then like each of their sub units some sort of well,
a lot of this though, like
infants that they can pull.
But this finance one happens in the back. Usually they're just like they don't even get involved until everything's over with, and it's like cool. Now we figure out how we build. You know what I'm saying?
Like I said, fudge it a little to make it more interesting, to make it more relevant to, and money is always to
the other thing is that not depending on this kind of an incident, you may not have like an actual logistics command because it's probably going to be managed with local resource part, and you're not going to have like this thing that's happening when in New York, right? There's a logistics command because they're like, okay, so I need 8,000 N95s. Where do those come from? Where do they get stored? How do I get them here? That's what those people manage, right? So like, but in this, it's just like call these. So a lot of times that's just fulfilled by the opera man, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not going to be ongoing long enough to need.
Well, I think that kind of makes sense though, because you want to have enough positions that you could have more people play, but if you only had this many people, you could still run a game with it, so like, you better at least have these three, but here's a couple of other positions that, there's enough to them that they're still interesting to play, but if you don't have them, then not an automatic non-starter, sort of double covered. Okay, so let's talk about problems that are going to come up. We can come back and pull that out later. because we kind of ended up with some stuff over here that I feel like are going to be problems along the way, as opposed to
what you have initially. You have the actual wreckage, right? The hazmat.
And for little, what the heck is a hazmat situation?
Chemical.
Okay, chemical spill. Right. Gotcha.
So there are bad chemicals on the ground. Then you have a medical problem.
And so you say wreckage as a problem. Like if there's a wreck somewhere on the train track.
So
like, what do you mean you say wreckage? Is it like the actual physical wreck itself?
Yeah.
And
quite
just
literally.
like how you're going to move it? Is that what you mean when you're saying it's a problem?
Well, we've had this collision with a bus, right? So we're just going to say it just wings the bus. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the bus is going to be somewhere, right? So it has to be stabilized, extrication to get the people out of the bus, right, safely. Maybe some can self-extricate. They're going to climb out. Maybe we have to cut the bus in half, whatever it is, right? Whatever that looks like. So that has to be managed. The train, well, is it still on the tracks? Is it partially on the tracks? Is it all off the track? Are those things obstructing the road, right? So there's all that has to be cleaned up enough to eventually get this back to a point where vehicles could go back through the area or whatever. Or even if you just need to clear the tracks, the crossing, so you can, maybe you have to go a country mile to go to the next crossing to come back around or whatever it is, right? So,
I guess I'm wondering, is traffic a separate issue to the wreckage, or is that included in wreckage? Okay.
No, it's a separate issue. So that's the next thing. So traffic, his favorite. Bye.
See, and I think this utilities goes to, like, did you take out something important? Is there a power situation? Is there...
Maybe, probably not. Maybe it's unless they got like light bulbs and that kind of stuff possible. But, more than likely just the arm or whatever.
Like an intersection, I feel like.
It depends on where, but yeah, you're right. But it's kind of
right, it is a potential pro.
Evacuation, because depending on what kind of a chemical we're talking about, they all have ratings for how far downhill you have to evacuate, depending on what size of spill it is.
Do actual fires fall in the category, or is that its own issue?
Kind of.
We're going to finance thing, money, resources, some of issue.
Wreck is also going to be heavy construction, dozers,
and truck or tow cars. Don't they have like train cars that can?
They can, but those probably takes a while to get there, maybe, or whatever. Because really, all you're concerned about initially is just clearing the tracks enough to be able to manage. Because if they're tankers, they're not trains full of people, so it's easier to deal with, I suppose. I'm sure there is. All right, so as we break the problems out, bystanders, crowd control, and media enforcement, medical patient has usually fire. EMS might have wreckage, construction.
You're talking strict, it's going to be
traffic, but then our power just going to be evacuation. Those are the ones that go to tell people, and then fire would be.
I think they're continuing as far as dispatch goes, because you can only send so many messages at once, right?
Well, especially this is where it's weird.
So I think it would be interesting to have different, to pull in that too many chiefs and not enough Indians thing just a touch to where, like different commander, your operations commander versus your logistics commander or whatever, could try and pull their influence in order to something up the dispatch track to get it done faster.
Well, actually, if this is in the 80s and 70s before, I like
okay, but again, don't care.
Okay. Well, the only reason why I mention that is because it makes things significantly more complicated because that's before there was a formal, like some cities had their own system or whatever. There was no formalized
I'm
federal
just saying
system.
It doesn't have to be like NIMS the game, but
I agree.
Just like that's a good source to pull from for the different aspects of the scene that you're looking at.
I just think it's interesting because you could it's not a formalized thing, so it's like things are complicated because everybody's in charge. You know what I'm saying? So.
Well, it might be interesting too to add some sort of incentive as far as who gets what amount of credit for cleaning things up. Because that always makes it. I like games with just a little bit of player versus player thing, and like everybody wants the shiniest star, right? Even when there's a tragedy happening.
Well, that's true. Well, and then like if we're talking about sheriffs and that kind of stuff, that's an elected.
I don't know as far as actual game mechanics go.
Maybe this is like kind of we're in the weeds on making this, but I guess maybe I have just more of a question about this game, a style of game is that. So I've done tons of these exercises, tabletop and whatever, right? And drilled them and gone through and do what they call the pre-planning and all this kind of right. This is our resources list, what we have, right? This is what we can get within an hour, blah 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 stuff. So, but all this revolves, generally speaking, around some kind of human tragedy, right? So I realize we're really good at running around playing murder hobos and doing all kinds of wicked crazy stuff, right? And there's like space alien infection and alien style people, chest bursters and all this kind of stuff. We play all that kind of stuff. But do you think that there's an interest in people playing like Tragedy, the role playing game? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't think it's Tragedy, the role playing game, because you're not really. There's a tragedy, and that's why you're all here. But you're focused on the bigger picture. picture because somebody has to be.
Right.
So, I mean, when you think about the times that you've been involved with something like this, like how often are you thinking the people involved as just a number that you're tallying?
No, I get it. Because I've ran...
Because you can't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't disagree. And I've ran several larger incidents and that kind of stuff, and I get it. At that point, it's just like, put the blinders on, get the job done, hard charge forward, deal with things after, because that's what we do. But like...
And I think that's something that you can drive home at the end, on how well or how poorly your group performs together. And that can be kind of the takeaway from it.
Well, the other thing is there has to be time crunch on it, because that is the unfortunate reality to all of these, is there's always some kind of, at the initial management of, there's always a time pressure that this has to be done, because as the time ticks off, things get worse, right?
Like, we always talk about like who this game is for and who it's not for, like, so I don't think this game would be for everybody. Just like, maybe the idea of a, Challenger explosion or the Corvair incident is not for everyone, but.
No, I agree. Like part of this thing.
I think it's interesting too as a game idea, just because so many people don't consider all the things that are involved with incidents like this. And it's really easy. It's really easy to criticize those things as somebody who's just sitting at home not thinking about all the things that are involved in it. And so, like, for that reason, it's a cool idea, because then you get to see, oh, wow, this is actually really complicated and really difficult.
Sometimes what the things that you say and the orders that you give for what needs to happen is not always exactly how it's executed. And sometimes that's just breakdown in communication. Sometimes that's just incompetence, both of leadership, but also your frontline staff. Like that stuff is hard.
Well, and it can be problems that arise that you're not, when I tell you to go do this thing, maybe there's some unintended issue that comes up in the process of carrying out that order. And then you have to make the best decision you can with what you have in front of you.
The other thing is can be into is
like the Chernobyl thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Well,
that's a hell of an end. I don't know. That's a pretty big thing to try and tackle. But
no, I agree. That's kind of like, I think to do something like that, you have to have a certain amount of like, really, you need to be in the weeds and studying that incident to do it.
But I think,
I almost like
that
better,
TV show that people put out really helped kind of provide some insight, because, you just see like, oh my God, something went wrong. There was this giant explosion. But when they go in and actually show all of the individuals that were there leading up to the incident, and you're like, whoa, wow.
So in Steam Hack, it's largely the one that we play with the Corvair, it's fate, right? So you're rolling fate dice, right? I think it works good in that sense. I think something like this is 100% PTA, because every incident you go to, it's like, cool, here's the plan. This is what we're trying to do. And all it does is continue to get more complicated.
A lot of succeed at a cost.
Yes. It gets more complicated, and you figure it out until we're done. Thank God, right?
And that's the perfect place for a hard decision, for a hard choice. That's the terminology we use, right?
Make a hard choice.
Hard choice, yeah.
Yep. Well, that, and then like, what am I?
About as hard as the choices get.
Those things about eyeballing a situation, like, what am I missing here? What's the most dangerous thing? And then when you go to do something, what have I missed? Like those kind of questions and stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was late is like this.
Then if you really even wanted this just for law enforcement, right? Or where the fires can break out and like have like your chief, however it's broken down, like not the individual firefighters, but like, so I'm the hazmat guru, right? I'm in charge of hazmat, and I'm the fire suppression guy, so I'm in charge of the actual fire suppression or whatever.
I think Power by the Apocalypse as well for shot clocks or something like this too.
Oh yeah,
would be really good. As far as your wreckage, your hazmat problem, but I think other less tangible things like the morale of a scene, or maybe even a shot clock to like, this is when it's going to hit this and your crowd control is going to get out of hand, or, kind of like we did when we're working on the Shakespeare one, right? Like, if all these clocks reach full, then you have like riot sort of situation on your hands, like crowd is no longer contained. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with shot clocks for something like this.
See, I was always curious because there's at Gen Con, and it's happened for the past several years at the On Trade Day. I think it's one of the groups from Holman goes, and they run a disaster scenario, and it's done at multiple tables, and like each table is like either a different part of the incident or disaster, but it's like a very large, and then there's like you're the like whatever civil engineer, like around the table or whatever. And I really wanted to see how they ran it, because I was kind of curious, one, if they the like NIM stuff or not, but also just to see what because they're all like, how do I say this, like on the civilian, not to bring like say military, but like the mundane part, like the non-responder part of it, you know. And I was just curious what their vision of it was and what they were doing that would be cool.
You know what I could be awesome? So you would have to get the game down to like a pretty concise amount of time. But you know how you watch all of those videos that you don't ever want to watch, and then like sometimes do like a run through of the scenario, and then they're like, oh, what went wrong here? And then they run it again, like the video again, and like this is like good team communication like we do on the ACLS videos. I think it would be really neat to give everyone like a position that's isolated. Like, okay, so you're going to be fire, you're going to be police, you're going to be EMS, but don't give anybody a boss. So like everybody's only looking at the thing from their perspective and like trying to get this individual piece of it done, and then like go back in and do it again with like this overarching sort of like, you know, command incident management aspect, and then see like how much more smoothly your problem gets solved when there's somebody actually trying to coordinate everything that's happening. I don't even know if that's possible.
No, I think it is.
I think that would be cool and valuable in a way I haven't seen before.
Right. Well, it's like one of those cool team building exercises that actually works, but you gotta have the time. And pretty stats would be, and pick a terrible out of be like, cool, eyeball, get it done, size them up, you know, and whatever fourth would be, powered by incident. This game hurts my soul a little bit.
I think it's neat.
I do too. No, I as much as I find some of this stuff terribly frustrating, it's only because we're the redheaded stepchildren responders. You know what I mean? You know, and to be fair, we're also the first ones to leave because, well, the patients are gone. Like, you don't need me. We'll have a truck here for you guys if somebody gets hurt, but like we're just gonna chill out and whatever, you know. So I get it. You know, like there's part of it. Like for this stuff, there's a reason for that, right? But I think I may work this up with a couple quick playbooks for like police, whatever. Or actually, I'll probably just, cause it'll be just a clear language, right? So sheriff, fire chief,
EMS coordinator.
Yeah, probably do coordinate. For we do like, because then you can, because a person could be like, oh no, we've got concerns about whatever equipment or blah blah blah. It's got to be a certain way stuff.
Mayor, or possibly like a county commissioner, Commissioner Gordon,
politician or whatever.
Because that sort of ties in your finance person and also sort of your logistics person into something that's a little bit more tangible. Some a lot of pull influence to get you things, but also some constraints on what they can fiscally make happen. I guess Commissioner Gordon is actually a police person, isn't he?
Yeah, he's
you get what I'm
right. Yeah, because some of this stuff is really cool because like get out in the counties and stuff like that, like it drills down into like our emergency plan includes like local ham operators who know to go to the hospital and set up at their tower there if communication's down, and then all communications will be routed through ham radio operator, right? like it's
what if those people die?
I don't know. I will like obviously it's different county by county, city by city, but the systems that I've been involved in and helped put together, like they really, you know, like, there's really cool people. Really, it's always interesting because the places that become the hubs of things are like the hospital. There's usually a school because they have a gymnasium or whatever, right? So then like in the situation that we had with the kids, like the school bus, it was like cool. So all these parents have to come get their children now, so they go, right? So they're going to take all these kids to school, and it's like, don't go there. We're going to go to church. You know, like it was like, how do you pick up and all? You know, like it was insane. But yeah. All right. Well, should we wrap this one up here? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's come to its natural conclusion for the moment anyway. Definitely lots to think of.
So should we call this a game storming episode?
Yeah, I think so. Game storming disaster management.
What it says powered by in command, right? PB powered by the apocalypse, powered by IC, PB
powered by
PBTIC,
powered by incident.
You know how we like our acronyms.
Powered by disaster.
I don't know. Maybe over the next couple of weeks, I'll work up something really simple and lay it out and throw it up on the Patreon. See how this kind of gets together. Because I've got 1,001 disasters which will, you know what I mean? You know, make work.
You get up later the super sweet random disaster table. Roll for chemical. Roll for.
Well, you know,
type of transportation involved in the incident. Planes, trains, or automobiles.
You could literally just roll
liquid, gas, solid.
There you go. Browse guide page 174. So basically, for chemicals, really easy. It's 111
choice
to 171, which would be 63 choices.
111, 70.
Yeah, because it's guide 111. They're all 3-digit guide. 111 minus 170, 63.
60.
So you'd roll a D63.
How are you getting 63?
174.
You said 171. You said 171 3 times.
Oh, minus 111. I'm sorry. 63. So you roll a D63. And like guide 116. Gases, flammable, unstable.
So you don't roll a D63 because that's lame. You roll like for category first and then roll for the subcategory of like what the thing actually. So like flammable, combustible.
Well, yeah, explosive.
Explosive, yeah.
Flammable, gases. Some of them you don't need to have on here. It's like, wow, we have a completely benign substance on the ground. Like, actually, I went on a milk trailer.
That should be on the random table because it's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, I actually had to call the EP.
Like, what happened? It's an entire freight car full of fish.
No, well, they had to call the EPA because they dumped whatever it was, 2,500 gallons of milk on the ground. It was like, what? That cornfield smelled terrible. Molten aluminum.
Anyways, random disaster chart. That's all I'm saying. Good times were had by all.
Or if you wanted to, you could just type in any 4-digit number into the ERG and see what you ended up with. Too. This one is called sodium superoxide. That's just amazing that there's a superoxide. Sodium superoxide. Seems like it should give someone...
Just super.
It sounds like they should give someone superpowers.
I don't think it does. I don't think superoxidation is ever good.
Probably, yeah.
That sounds like insta-cancer.
May explode.
Or super clean clothes.
May explode from friction, heat, or contamination. They will accelerate burning when involved in a fire. May ignite combustibles. Some react explosively with hydrocarbon. Containers may explode when heated. Runoff may create fire or has explosion hazard.
Okay. That's enough of your random phone.
Sorry. All right. I'll probably close it. All right. So I think that one will do it for us there. We'll put together the Powered by NIM or ICS or whatever you want to call it.
Powered by disaster.
Powered by disaster?
It's so close to apocalypse. How do you not choose that as an option?
Okay. PB powered by the... Right on. So I don't know. We'll see. We may work this up into a couple 4 or 5 roll playbooks and some basic moves and whatnot. We'll see how it turns out. It might be fun to do. So I don't know. I guess if you've ever been involved in any kind of a game where they had some like larger disaster management happening, I guess they've been running the Rose Holman has been running that game at Gen Con for several years. I'm pretty sure it's Rose Holman that does it. But if you've played in that or been part of it, it'd be really cool to hear from you. Been kind of curious about it for a while. And I was really hoping to kind of peek in on it this year, but obviously that is not happening. So give us a shout out and let us know if there's anything that you've kind of done along these lines or anything that you've played with that's been kind of interesting to see. We'd love to kind of hear about it and see what worked or didn't work. You can hit me up, James at Just One More Fix, or you can hit us up on our Facebook group or on Twitter at Just One More Fix. As you know, we're a member of the Gonna Geek Network, so you can head over to GonnaGeekNetwork.com and check out all the geek content over there with loads of other podcasts that you can check out. And if you like what we do here at Just One More Fix, you can head over to Patreon.com/Just One More Fix and get access to all of our raw audio feeds and pre-shows, as well as our zine and PDF and print format, depending on what level you support at, and join the awesome ranks of our supporters like Timothy Barra, Alistair H., Simon McNair, Hector Treelane, Tiziano Furlano, Alan White, Paul Hubbard, and the OG Todd Olson. I think that'll do it for us this week, and we'll see you all next.
Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at Just One More Fix.